If you don't know what Bitcoin is, don't worry. You will by the end of this. If you do know what Bitcoin is, you're in the right place. But a good place to start, the place that I started when I started my journey, is not with Bitcoin, but with money in general. And what I like to remind us all when we talk about money is the story of the fish swimming through water. And he comes up to the other fish and he says, "Hey, how's the water today?" And the other fish says, "What the hell's water?" Right? Because you use money all the time, everywhere in your normal lives, and you think you kind of like, we all know what money is. But saying you know, you don't know what money is unless you actually study it, because we use it so much and so naturally that no one ever taught you what money is and how it works. Your teachers didn't teach you unless you studied it intentionally. Most people never think it through. And even people that do study it intentionally, most of them are going to like school where the bankers have paid to teach them how stocks work so that they can go to banks and make money for banks by manipulating stock markets on behalf of banks. And that doesn't exactly teach them how money works either. So to set the stage, I want to just remind us, like, imagine that we're cave people, right? Imagine you're way back and you and your family have, some spears and some rocks and some fish or food or stuff. You've got your little family unit's worth of stuff, maybe your tribe, right? And you travel around, maybe you have your cave, you do your thing, and then you encounter a different tribe or a different family, and they've got some cool stuff that you want. How would you trust, you could say, "My fish for your rocks," right? That works, right? "My fish for your rocks." That works. Bartering works. But it is complicated. They're like, "I am a vegetarian. No thanks. I don't kill animals." And once you start to trade enough different ways, you realize that, it would be awfully convenient if we all agreed on something that's valuable. And we don't think this through. Humans just naturally do this. They naturally find trade goods that everyone thinks is dope. Like, really commonly, actually, it's drugs. Drugs, food, and shiny rocks is usually like the three universal trade goods and variations on the three. But what's important about that is what it allows us to do, because it allows you to collaborate, right? Before you can exchange my time, I worked, I made this basket, and I want to exchange it with you, it's collaboration that's happening. I've now given you a basket. You can put your shiny rocks in it. You've given me a horse. I can till my fields with it. That collaboration that built culture, that built society, is only enabled once we have a way to trust you. Because I don't trust you. I don't know you. You look weird, right? But if we all have shiny rocks that we can trade, then I don't need to trust you, because you can just hand me shiny rocks, and I know everyone likes shiny rocks, right? Or cocaine, or whatever it is your guys are trading. And so it's that replacement of the trust of, I trust my brother to give him because I'll just beat him up if it doesn't work out, right? But the trust basis of culture is money. And that's a technology. It's not a thing. It's a technology. Because that technology of getting better and better and better monies allowed us to build bigger and bigger and bigger cultures. It allowed us to build spaceships, guns, buildings, churches, right? And so I want to remind us fish swimming through the water that when we're talking about money, we are talking about all the, the money stuff, but we're also talking about the trust that allows us to interact with people that we otherwise wouldn't know. But because of this technology, we can build things together and we know it's going to work, right? And on top of that technology, so many more stories that we all know throughout history can arise for good and for worse, right? And what Ryan is going to come and share with us is what I might say is the end of the line, So, without further ado, I want to welcome Ryan Matta to the stage to tell us all about Bitcoin.
Thank you, sir. Ian did a great intro there. Thank you, Ian. I want to give a big shout out to Mark and the Old State Saloon. Thank you guys so much for having me and giving me the opportunity here. There's not very many people as brave as Mark to put his business out here and do what he's doing. It takes a lot, because you guys have probably heard the other whistleblowers that have came forward, like Garrett O'Boyle, right? When you try to expose the government's corruption, the government will crush you. And that's not an understatement. They will absolutely crush you. So I want to give a big shout out to Mark and how grateful I am to be here to even share this with you guys. So thank you guys. Thanks, Mark. So Ian had said that I was going to teach you guys about Bitcoin and help you understand what Bitcoin is, but that is absolutely impossible to do in a 45-minute presentation. So we're not going to do that, but I'm going to more so incentivize why it's in your best interest to understand what Bitcoin is and how profitable. They call it MGU, which is money go up technology, right? They say in the Bitcoin world, you came for the money, you stay for the peaceful revolution. Because once you understand how our government is stealing your money and how you can protect it, you're highly incentivized to do so. So I want to start off with this first slide and explain to you guys, when you save in Bitcoin, everything around you gets cheaper, right? And if you think Bitcoin's bad, or you don't trust Bitcoin, or you think Bitcoin's bad for the environment, and you tell me that, you are literally taking Nancy Pelosi's talking points and spitting them back in my face, because that's what they've brainwashed you into believing. They don't want you to own Bitcoin because you're going to get out of the 9-to-5 rat race. Once you get to a point where you have enough wealth in Bitcoin, you never have to work ever again. Your kids never have to work, because your wealth that you've acquired is gaining so much more in value, while the currencies of any nation are constantly leaking. And this slide is a perfect example of that. So in 2012, this is what the house that you're looking here that I carefully crafted is a 3-bedroom ranch house on 1 acre, right? A 3-bedroom ranch house on 1 acre, there's the mouse. A 3-bedroom ranch house on 1 acre in 2012 was $250,000. At that time, Bitcoin was $13 a coin. So your dream house in 2012 would cost you 19,230 Bitcoin. In 2016, Bitcoin went up to $430 per coin. But because of inflation, your house didn't change. You didn't get any more acreage. Nothing happened. Nothing changed. But your house is now worth $340,000. You didn't make a good investment. Your government is stealing your wealth, right? Your dollars are losing value, so your house is going up in value. That same house in 2016 cost 790 Bitcoin. Fast forward to 2020, Bitcoin's now $7,200. Your dream house is now $420,000, 58 Bitcoin. By 2024, and this is at January 1st of each year, so right now, on January 1st, Bitcoin was $42,050. Your dream house is now 530. 530,000 only cost you 12 Bitcoin. Today, Bitcoin's 62,000. Well, that's 66 now. But at 62,000, your dream house only costs you 8.9 Bitcoin. So you see the housing market and everything else, toilet paper, doesn't matter what item it is, when you've saved your wealth in Bitcoin, everything around you gets cheaper. So let's take a look at, I did some analogies, so I want to show you guys dollars and the cost of everything over a 50-year period. So we're going to go back to into like the 1990s, for example. We're not going to use things like a radio, right? Because in 1974, almost every house in America had a radio. Today, I mean, you got your phone, you could probably listen to the radio, you got a radio in your car, but every house doesn't have a radio. So I wanted to compare items that were pretty much unchanged since 2007, or since the 70s. Now, again, in 1990, a plasma TV cost $10,000 for a 40-inch plasma TV. Now you can get a 65-inch at Walmart for $299. So what that shows you is that technology, by design, makes everything cheaper. So we live in what's called a free market, or we're supposed to live in a free market. So when your government has convinced you that a 2% inflation rate is a good thing, in a free market by design puts a 5% deflationary force on everything in the market. So for example, in the 1900s, so let's just say 1901, if a farmer wanted to till and harvest 100 acres of potatoes, At that time, he might have need 1 man per acre. So 100 men had to work for him because each man had to go there with a till and by his hands and pull out every potato. Fast forward 20 years, and the farmers realized, wow, if we tie this piece of wood behind an ox, I might only need 50 employees, right? So then the entrepreneur goes, wow, I see that. What if I put 4 oxes together, right? And you see technology and innovation allows an entrepreneur to go, wow, this guy's selling a potato for 10 cents. I can extract it out of the ground with these oxes for a penny. So he's going to go to market now with those potatoes, and he's going to sell them for 8 cents and undercut you. Because technology allows them to be so profitable, it constantly makes everything cheaper. So everything we buy on a daily basis should be exactly like those TVs. But our government's stealing our wealth, so it's not. So I wanted to go back and I wanted to take all of the years of Bitcoin just to show you how much Bitcoin goes up in value. So there's 2009 all the way to 2024, and you can see basically infinity from in 2009. In 2010, it was 5,910%, 11, and you guys can see how much Bitcoin gains per year. And I said, okay, well, 1 year is nothing because we want to hold Bitcoin forever. So over a 4-year period, I said, okay, what if we averaged the 4 years since Bitcoin started? How profitable would it have been if you would have just held Bitcoin for 4 years? And you can see how profitable it is. The first early days, obviously 761 million %. The next 4 years, it was 32%. Then it was 2,800, then it was 240%. So I wanted to give you guys a level-headed perspective. So I say, let's take out the best 5 years of Bitcoin's performance, and let's only talk about the worst 10 years. So if you wouldn't even have been buying Bitcoin in the top 5 years, you would have only been buying for 10 years. What would have been your average gain year after year? And we're talking compounding interest, right? 73%. So your government you're saving in dollars. At the very least, your government's stealing 2% because that's what they tell us, 2% inflation rate. So they're literally, the value of your money, if you put $100,000 in the bank, right? A year from now, if they've taken 2%, right? Your 100,000 can now only buy you roughly $98,000 worth of goods and services. So I said, let's say I gave you guys had $100,000 today. And you're like, today I'm going to listen to Ryan, I'm going to put $100,000 into Bitcoin. How much money will I have in 10 years? Worst case scenario. At a 73% compounding interest rate, you can see it on the screen, it's astronomical. In the first year, your 100,000 turns into 173,000. Then your 173,000 starts fresh and it compounds at 73%. Your 173,000 turns into $298,890. And it goes on, right? So every year you're saving in Bitcoin, the wealth in your bank account is appreciating at 73%, right? In America, when you save in dollars, best case under Trump, you are roughly losing 2%. But really, because a free market puts a 5% deflationary force in the market, they are stealing that from you as well. So at the very least, your dollars are at the very least leaking 7% per year. And I'm going to show you that, right? So again, I went through the average cost of a house. I've showed you guys that already. But let's say we go back to 1974. That same 3-bedroom ranch on 1 acre has appreciated to January 1st, say $400,000. That is a 5.37% inflation rate. Your house didn't get more expensive. Your government printed so many dollars out of thin air that your house value went up by 5.37% per year. So if we continue on that same trajectory for the next 50 years, what do you think your great-great-grandchildren will be paying for a house in 2074 for the same 3-bedroom ranch? Any guesses?
2 million.
2 million. Anybody? 4? Anybody? 4? So we got 2 and 4. How about 6.39 million? Does anybody think that your grandkids are going to get enough of a raise over the next year? How much have you guys got at your work? Are you guys getting 7% per year? Is anybody's boss giving them? Mark, you giving out 7% raises here? You're paying your employees in Bitcoin. So you guys get where I'm going with this. Let's talk about eggs, right? Eggs, same thing, 60 cents to $3.50. That's a 3.7% inflation rate. This isn't the craziest one. And I wanted to show you again, I'm showing you guys items that haven't changed. Eggs haven't changed. Chickens are shitting out eggs, and your eggs haven't gone up by that much, right? Even though they're getting injected with steroids and hormones, and we're not even factoring in the fact of what you're eating. We're just basic eggs, right? So a dozen eggs is going to cost you $20.21. Nobody's freaking out about that, right? Let's talk about your great-grandkid's first car. So in 1974, and this analogy was done by, in 1974, a Dodge Demon would run you about $2,600, a Ford Galaxy would run you $3,100, and a Ford Pinto would run you $1,900. The average of those is $2,582. So I wanted to just give you guys the most accurate and best, right? Where it's not perfect, but it'll give you a good idea of how much that car, that same basic Ford Focus, we'll call it now, starting car is $47,940, right? Anybody want to take a guess of what your great-grandchildren's first car is going to cost in 74?
1 million.
1 million, Ian. Anybody? 300,000? 3 million. How about 891,000? So you're going to, does anybody think that they can afford to buy their great-grandchildren their first car at $891,000? Only if you got Bitcoin. Amen to that. Now we're talking. You guys are learning quick. I like this audience, Mark. So 1974 gas. Just take a look at our gas. That's a 4.3% inflation rate. In 1974, you're going to be averaging, best case, right? And that's over the last 50 years. We're not even talking about the damage that's been done in the last 10. I wanted to give you the biggest, broadest picture. $31.19. Now let's say you guys are those guys who like to stack those shiny rocks, right? Those gold little shiny rocks that we have given value to, right? Which I'm about that. I like stacking those shiny rocks. I do as well. But if we take a look at January 1st, 1974, gold was $184 an ounce. By January 1st of 2024, gold, and I might have made that wrong. I think I actually gave you guys today's gold price because I don't think it was that high in January 1st, but that's 7.21% inflation rate. So your government is devaluing the wealth by 7%, roughly, and you're 5%, 3%, but roughly 7%, and you're putting your wealth into something that's barely keeping your head above water, right? Gold was brilliant 100 years ago when we lived in a non-digital age. But could you imagine going to a gas station and trying to like shave off some gold shavings? Because everybody tells us we're going to go back to a gold standard, right? Really? Who are you going to trust to hold your gold? When you want to flee a nation like Nazi Germany and you're Jewish and you want to take your wealth out of that nation, how are you going to get past those checkpoints in Nazi Germany with those soldiers, with your gold? You either have the brilliant wife who decided to take all of your gold and silver and melt it down into clothing hangers and make clothing hangers and then put your clothes on those hangers, because that was the only way that I've heard anybody got gold or silver out of Germany. Everybody that tried, that gold and silver was taken by those soldiers at those checkpoints. So gold was great back in the day, and I still think it has value. I still got gold. I bought a little while ago. So I'm not opposed to gold, but anybody that tries to convince you that we're going to go back to a gold-backed currency, I think they're lying to you, and I think they're lying to themselves. So gold only appreciated at 7.2%. So if you would have put your wealth in gold, you would have done good. Your money wasn't leaking and losing value like dollars, but you're barely keeping your head above water. What about the S&P 500? Surprisingly, from 1974, the S&P 500 was $97, one share of the S&P 500. In January 1st, it was $5,751. That's an annual inflation rate of 10.5%. So that means that if you would have put your money into the S&P 500, it would have been your best way to protect your wealth. And this is where you see what all millionaires and billionaires do, right? They never save in dollars. Because when you save in dollars, you're literally allowing the government to just devalue your wealth. So I wanted to drive that fact home. And I want to talk about the purchasing power basically since the creation of the Federal Reserve. So according to information that's available to us, this is 2024, the US dollar itself has lost a significant amount of its purchasing power. And when I say purchasing power, what I'm meaning is your ability to go out and buy goods from a free market and what a dollar is willing to buy you, or what people are willing to give you of their goods and services. Because people use energy. If I'm selling bracelets, I'm sitting there and I'm weaving these bracelets, or I'm crocheting, or however I'm making these bracelets, I'm using my time, my energy. And in exchange for that, I'm going to charge you $1, $2, or whatever it is. And to you, you don't know how to make bracelets, so you're like, yeah, I'll pay $2 for a bracelet, even though it cost me 50 cents to make it, because you know how much time went in to make it. You're trading your time for goods and services. We all go to work, we trade our time to an employer who's paying us. We're trading time, energy for goods and services. So from 1913 to 2020, right, The US dollar has lost roughly 96% of its purchasing power. That means a dollar in 1913 would buy you the equivalent of 4 cents today because it's lost 96% of its value. Well, from 2020 just to 2024, they would say that that dollar has lost an additional 18%. So what that means is if you, in the last 4 years since Trump left office, if you put $100,000 in the bank, you've lost 18% of that. 18%. That's a lot. That's $18,000 less. I mean, that's almost a used car. I mean, that's a down payment on a house. That's a lot of money that you've allowed your government to steal from you because you weren't educated enough to take the time to understand what Bitcoin is. And this is what I hope that's going to come from this. Bitcoin is such a complicated subject. It's such a complicated protocol. I don't want you to look at Bitcoin like it's a coin or it's a cryptocurrency. I want you to look at Bitcoin like it's real estate. And in the Bitcoin world, there's only going to be 21 million of these coins ever mined. That 21 million coins are the best acreage in the digital universe. They're the only acreage in the digital universe. There's only 21 million of them. Today, only 200,000 people own one whole Bitcoin. You're watching everything around the world collapse into Bitcoin. BlackRock is a perfect example. BlackRock since January 1st, since ETFs were approved, BlackRock has bought $24 billion worth of Bitcoin. And you're like, well, why do I care if BlackRock owns Bitcoin? What was BlackRock buying before Bitcoin, Ian? Houses, right? Those are single family homes that Bitcoin was buying, driving up the price of all your homes. You're great if you own one, but if you're a renter, how pissed have you been in the last year or 2 years? You are getting crushed because BlackRock's money, people think BlackRock's evil, and I absolutely think they are evil. The worst organization company in the world. But BlackRock's business model is to make their clients money. They are highly incentivized to put their clients' capital to work in the best way possible. They might be evil in the back end. They might be trying to buy up all the single family homes. But at the end of the day, if they're not making their clients money, they're going to go bankrupt. And they got to make their clients more money than their competition, because if they're not, their clients are going to move their money and they're going to go to their competition. So what Bitcoin has now done is BlackRock put $24 billion into Bitcoin, and it didn't go to driving up the value of your homes. Because Bitcoin is the best asymmetric bet. It is the apex predator. It dominates in every single category, and we're going to get into the 5 services of money here in a minute. But I wanted just to show you, so 18% over the last 4 years. That's a lot of money. And what that means is that the US dollar has lost roughly 98 to 99% of its purchasing power since the creation of the Federal Reserve. Banks were created, the Federal Reserve was created to be the lender of last resort, if you will. So what that means is prior to 1930, people would take their gold, they'd go to a bank, and the bank would issue, in exchange for that gold certificates. And that's where the term good as gold came from, because you could take those certificates that you could spend and trade and interact with in the open market, you could take them back to the brokerage or the bank, and they would give you your gold back. So your certificates were as good as gold. But you inherently had some man or some company or organization that was in charge of securing all the gold. If you didn't get robbed or mugged or killed, these people spend money. And when they have all that money and all these resources, and they never think that everybody's going to come to the bank at the same time, and there's going to be a bank run until it happens, and then the money's not there and the bank collapses. And that was super common prior to 1913. So in order to prevent the citizens from going with pitchforks and beheading the bankers, they said, well, we should probably, create a Federal Reserve so that we have a lender of last resort so our heads don't end up on pitchforks. Now, Ian's done a lot of great work into the Federal Reserve, so if you guys aren't watching Ian's content, you should follow him. He's done a lot of great deep dives into it, and he'll explain it better. These banks have been stealing our money for a very long time, and we continue to allow them. We continue to use their banks. Every time you go and purchase something with a credit card, that bank is getting a 3% fee. And we all use credit cards so common that businesses don't even offer cash discounts anymore. They just have already baked that 3% fee into everything that they sell. So when you go to buy something, you're automatically paying 3% more because the business owner is not going to take that haircut. He's going to pass that haircut on to you. So I wanted to do another analogy here. And I wanted to say, okay, let's say you hit the lottery today and you got $1 million, and you're like, I want to make sure that that wealth makes it to my great-great-grandkids. So I want to take that $1 million and I'm going to bury it in a safe in my backyard. If you did that today, 100 years from now, how much would your great-great-grandchildren would be able to be? Because I don't know about anybody in here that has worked and made $1 million, but that would take me a lifetime. That would be living on like absolute nothing, putting every penny I can for 50 years into a safe so that I can possibly pass that wealth on to my great-great-grandkids. So at this current rate, just the exact same rate over the last 100 years, that's what your great-great-grandkids will be able to buy. Best case, $4,163. We have a term in the Bitcoin world for people that save in fiat dollars, and we call them poor, right? True story. So the US dollar is decreased by approximately 15 to 25% over the last 5 years. That's a lot. Did anybody get a 15 to 25% raise over the last 5 years? Because if you didn't, you're getting broker. And that's why it's harder to pay your bills, and you hate filling up your gas tank, and you're taking money out of your savings, or maybe you even had to cash into your 401k. And people go, well, how do I get Bitcoin? I don't have money, but I have my 401k. Can I move it into an ETF? So you're going to take the money that you've worked your entire life and saved, and you're going to go give it to some 21-year-old who just graduated from college at whatever woke university, and his dad's best friends is a buddy at Goldman Sachs. So this 21-year-old kid who knows absolutely nothing about finance is going to be managing your 401k, and he's going to be taking a 3% fee every time you want to move an asset around so that you can hope to make best case 10% and barely keep your head above water? No, folks. I cashed out my entire 401k, I paid the 25 to 30% fee, and I put it all into Bitcoin. And that is the only reason I'm not homeless today. I chose to take that control back from these bankers, right? And once you understand what Bitcoin is and you understand how the banks make the money, that's what Bitcoin allows you to do. That's what cryptocurrency allows you to do. These protocols out there have created basically their digital version of a bank where you can borrow and you can lend out your Bitcoin. Now I'm risking lending my Bitcoin because it is on a protocol, right? It is online where I'm putting basically my Bitcoin into a digital wallet that gets locked into a protocol, but then people can borrow my Bitcoin at a hefty fee, 7 to 10% per month. But what the online exchange does is in the Bitcoin world, in the crypto world, if you want to borrow Bitcoin, you need to be over collateralized. So if you want to borrow $100,000 of US dollar coin, you need to put up $200,000 worth of Bitcoin. That because Bitcoin fluctuates, right? We want to make sure that your loan is always over collateralized. So that way if Bitcoin worst case comes down 50%, once that hits that dead even mark, the protocol is going to automatically liquidate your loan and it's going to pay me back, the lender. So that way the lender can never get screwed over. So you're always over collateralized. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to play the bank. And this is why they fear you learning about Bitcoin, because you can set up automatic trading bots that can't lose. They only trade Bitcoin, and they trade 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they only scalp 10 cents or 50 cents or $1. The more money you give them, the more money they trade. But this is what Ray Dalio, this is what all these billionaires are doing. They all have algorithmic trading bots that trade the markets. They have enough money to control and manipulate the markets, and they're just sitting here raking in dough. They're taking their capital that they've already worked their life away for, and they're putting that capital to work that's generating them more money. Once you understand Bitcoin, you start saving in Bitcoin, you can start doing things like I'm explaining. Now, that might be a year or two down the road, or you might never do it because you're happy with 73% compounding interest. You're happy turning 100,000 into 24 million over a 10-year period. But you can do it in a much shorter period of time. I became a crypto millionaire 3 times in my life. Well, I'm working on the 3rd now. The first 2 times I've lost everything doing it wrong, right? Not taking advice where they say not your keys, not your crypto, leaving your cryptocurrency on a centralized exchange. Like if you guys were to go buy Bitcoin, you're gonna have to buy it from a centralized party. Then you're gonna have to learn how to take it off that exchange and put it into a wallet. And that's why I say that it's a complicated animal. Just to even understand what Bitcoin is and how Bitcoin works, you're gonna have to spend 20 hours. Just watching podcasts, watching documentaries, learning about it, understanding it. It's complicated and there's a lot of moving parts. Then from there, you could probably buy your first Bitcoin after 20 hours, but you're just gonna be able to hold it in that wallet that's controlled by that centralized exchange. Another 120 hours for you to understand enough of what I do and how to actually use your Bitcoin and make money with it and how to guarantee that no government can ever take it from you. The United States became the United States of America because our government protected your private property rights. At the end of the day, plain and simple, you had private property rights here in America. The American dream was any single man could come to America with nothing more than a work ethic, and he could go get a 9-to-5 at any automotive industry. Anybody, any immigrant could come to America with nothing more than that work ethic and go get a 9-to-5, and one man working 30 hours could support a family of 5 and still have money to take vacations every year. They'd never worked weekends. Even slaves had Sundays off. And we've been so programmed and conditioned that we have to work 7 days a week. We have to get 2 jobs. It's the Gary V, right? All these motivational speakers. Just go out and hustle and work harder. Get a second job, start a podcast, make 40K, right? Well, it's not that easy. With the amount of money that our government is stealing, you're never going to be able to save. You're never going to be able to get your head above water. So you have to understand how to use the money that you've created and use that money to make more money and continue to generate money. And that's what Bitcoin can do. Bitcoin is delivering private property rights to every human on the face of the earth. That's a big deal, right? Because your government can never take your Bitcoin. Once you actually own it and you have it in a wallet that you control, and I know these terms are confusing to you, but there's a way for you to take that Bitcoin from that centralized exchange, send it to a wallet that no government knows you have, and even with the CIA and their best technology, they cannot hack in and get into that wallet and take your Bitcoin. There's no hotline. There's no CEO of Bitcoin. There's no company or organization for the DOJ, the corrupt Merrick Garland, to go and sue and force the CEO of Bitcoin to turn over your wallet, the keys to your wallet. It's not possible. So once you get your Bitcoin, it is yours. So when Klaus Schwab tells you own nothing and you'll be happy, he might be right about everything but Bitcoin. But you can own your Bitcoin and they can never take that from you. And that's powerful. In the world of corruption and everything that we're looking at here today, with what you guys seen in our documentary, everything that man has ever created or ever touched, he's been able to corrupt. From the SEC to the DOJ to oil to big pharma to the food, it's all been corrupted. Bitcoin is the first invention in all of human history that is incorruptible. And that's powerful, really, really powerful. So between that, what our government is doing, the fact of how much wealth you're losing, I hope that this presentation at least motivated you enough to understand how much money you're leaving on the table by ignoring Bitcoin, understanding that the people that are trying to tell you that Bitcoin's a bad thing are the Nancy Pelosi's, the Chuck Schumers, our government that obviously does not have the best interests of their citizens in mind, right? They wanted to create this perpetual slave state, which they've done a very good job at. And I'll leave you guys on this. If we went back to, let's just say, like 1600 AD, during the period of where the Jews were enslaved over that 400-year period, if you were born in year 200 into a family of slaves, what would you know? You would know how to be a good little slave because your parents were slaves, your grandparents were slaves, and your great-great-grandparents were slaves. Would you have any idea of what freedom felt like or private property rights? No, you wouldn't. Because you've been conditioned to be a good little slave, and that's all you knew. That's all your parents knew, right? Our parents, our great-grandparents, were born into this fiat slavery Ponzi scheme. The work hard, put money into your 401k. The Warren Buffetts told us, right? That's how you save. That's how you get retirement. You put money into your 401k. No, you were programmed to be a good little slave, and that's what they've created. And now we're at the end of this fiat Ponzi scheme, and it's gotten to the point where 401ks are so corrupt that Gen Z is now putting into their 401ks 19 years earlier than Gen X. And they're being told that no matter how much they put in or how hard they work, they're never going to be able to retire. So you guys are at the top of that 401k Ponzi scheme. You have Gen Zs and these Gen Xers down here like, why would we do that? Why would I ever put my money into a 401k? And you guys are at the top of this pyramid. What do you think happens when nobody's putting that money into the bottom of the pyramid anymore? It's going to collapse. 100% it's going to collapse. And we saw that with Silvergate Bank, right? Why didn't Silvergate Bank go completely under? Because Janet Yellen went to the United States Postal Service pension fund, and she pulled the United States Postal Pension Fund to backstop Silvergate Bank because Gavin Newsom and all of his buddies, that's where all their money flew. And when it's like a dominoes, once one goes, the rest are going to go. That's why they could never impeach Mayorkas, because if Mayorkas went and that rung went, the cascading, the contagion as they call it, would have been catastrophic. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this presentation. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for having me, Ian. God bless you guys.
Thank you, Ryan. Don't go anywhere. We're going to do some Q&A real quick. We're going to do some quick Q&A. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
First and foremost, very important question coming in from the internet from Kaylina. She forgot to come by and get her purse, Kaylina. Is it still there? Thank you so much. She seems to have had a boating accident. It's light blue, coach purse, smallish. There's nothing in it, don't worry. She lost all of her Bitcoin.
Yes.
Kaylina,
kind of
we don't know if your purse is still here, but hopefully you have all your money in Bitcoin, so no one can steal from you.
My wallet was on that boat too, man.
Yeah. That's where you lost all those millions in crypto, huh?
Bummer, huh?
So if you're listening, CIA, Ryan doesn't have any more crypto. You can't take it from
Lost
him.
it.
I'm going to start with some easy and funny questions, and then we've got a doctor on the internet that has some very, very hard questions, and I'm actually pretty interesting, deep questions that we'll get to in a second here.
I'm excited.
Someone on the internet heard that the dark web runs off of Bitcoins. Is that true?
I hope so. I mean, why? Is it a bad thing?
I mean, it depends what's on the dark web, right? I mean, there's probably bad and good, right? Do you there used to be the sort of stigma that Bitcoin was used all for crime. Do you think that was true? Do you think it's still true?
I think that if you're a criminal and you're using Bitcoin to carry out your operations, you are mentally ill, like you have an issue. Bitcoin is traceable, right? So every transaction that you've ever sent from the beginning of time can be verified. And not just verified, the IP address that sends that Bitcoin is recorded. And our government, the CIA, is tracking every single transaction, every IP address, every penny that gets sent in Bitcoin is trackable. When you send Bitcoin, you just have numbers, right? Like a bank account. If your name wasn't attached to your bank account, I would just see numbers. Your Bitcoin wallet is the same thing. You are just numbers. So once you publicly share your Bitcoin wallet address, and I say, hey, you guys want to donate to my Bitcoin wallet address, and I post it out there, then my name is attached to that address, right? And the CIA and AI, they're tracking all of that. Don't think that they're not. So I would say that if you're a criminal who's using Bitcoin, you're not going to be in business for much longer.
Word. We're going to come back to you, CIA friends, in just a second. Doctor has questions about that. Ryan, how much lost Bitcoin do you think there might be in total? And might you kind of enlighten us to the funny conundrum that is lost Bitcoins for a second here?
Yeah, so I've lost a lot of Bitcoin, 13 to be exact that I know of. So when you're sending Bitcoin, you have an address that's just like a bank account, right? Numbers, letters, case sensitive. So when I want to send you Bitcoin, you're going to give me your wallet address. Well, if I go to highlight it and maybe I don't copy that last number and I put that address in there and I hit send, it's going to send Bitcoin to that address. Well, if that's the wrong address, there's no getting it back. I've sent 13 Bitcoin. You know, back then Bitcoin was only a couple $100, but I've sent 13 Bitcoin to the wrong address and it's just, they call it the ether. It's just gone. It's never coming back. And there's nobody at the Bitcoin hotline to call, which sucks when it happens. But that is what makes Bitcoin Bitcoin. That's why Bitcoin's so powerful, because there is no CEO. There's nobody to come and recover your funds for you.
So at current 60 something $1,000 prices, 13 Bitcoin is over that's like what, $800,000 worth of Bitcoin just got sent to the ether.
Yeah, it's not even the worst.
Some point in the past.
Yeah, that's
sorry.
So he asked how many Bitcoin are missing.
Kaylina, you should probably come get your purse before long here.
Hey, you said ask how many are lost, right? So there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin ever mined. Best estimates are 4 million have been sent to that ether address. They're gone, never coming back. So inside of each Bitcoin, there's 100 million what are called Satoshis. The creator of Bitcoin has never come forward because you can't create a currency. The government would come out and crush and kill you. So that's part of the reason why the creator's never been known. We don't know who created Bitcoin. It doesn't matter who created it, but we don't know. And there's roughly 4 million Bitcoin that are gone. So out of that 17 million, roughly, acres left in the best cyberspace, 200,000 people in the world own a full Bitcoin. To be equivalent, when everything collapses into Bitcoin, right? That would make you in the top 200,000 richest people in the world if you own one whole Bitcoin. In today's money, that's about $36 million net worth. So if you can acquire one Bitcoin today and everything eventually collapses into Bitcoin like it will, and you're in the top 200,000 richest people in the world, your net worth will be roughly 27 million or something crazy like that.
Just don't send it to the wrong address. Dr. Wonko has very serious questions. He's on the internet. So we're going to switch to silly names with serious questions here. We were just talking about the CIA. It's quite possible that the CIA created Bitcoin. Do you have kind of a level of certainty or distrust of that theory? Do you give it any credit?
I say, let's say they did, right? Best case, they did. Worst case, I guess best case, they didn't. Best case, they did. Bitcoin is an open source protocol, which means that anybody right now can go and audit that code. It is literally the exact same as a code that built your website or the code that secures the Twitter algorithm. But it's open source, meaning anybody can audit it and everybody can audit it, which means that every nation state that is highly incentivized to destroy Bitcoin has thrown everything, including the kitchen sink, at destroying it. And they couldn't. If they could hack Bitcoin, that means that they can hack the nuclear codes because they are secured by the same type of algorithms. So if Bitcoin is hackable, sorry guys, we have a lot more to worry about than you're missing Bitcoin. So who created Bitcoin? It doesn't matter because it can't be changed. It is so decentralized that there are so many people out there mining Bitcoin and securing it that the amount of computers out there that are mining Bitcoin today are using like 2.8 times what the United States naval, our entire Navy consumes in energy usage every day. So in order to hack or destroy Bitcoin, you need to get more than 50% of that energy and all the equipment that's using it, and you need to overpower the existing network, which would require would require China, Russia, and the United States all pooling all of their resources to do that, and it's just not feasibly possible. So who created it? I don't know, but it doesn't matter.
In a similar vein, to just kind of like play out that point one last time. Oh, that's the wrong question there. Dr. Wonko.
I like that name.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's got some real criticisms here, and these are criticisms that lots of people have, and they're worth discussing. He says that Bitcoin, though maybe it's not hackable, it is also manipulable by large whales like hedge funds,
yes,
banks, people with lots of capital, and even maybe Satoshi Nakamoto himself, because he holds a huge amount of Bitcoin in his original wallet. Do you ever worry about the ability for Bitcoin to be pushed around by the big boys?
Absolutely, and that'll lead us into my next documentary, which is going to be coming, which is called Incorruptibility. Me and Eric V. Stacks, if you guys aren't following him over on X, he goes by @Eric V. Stacks. We're going to go on a mission, kind of just like we did to figure out what is treason and prove that this is treason, and we're going to go on a mission to talk about proof of reserves. So because Bitcoin is on a blockchain, it can be audited at any time. What we saw happen with Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX was this dweeb who was heavily backed by the Democratic Party getting basically put into a position which was way over his skis. And he was supposed to be this nerd that traded the Kim P. Chang and somehow made all these billions and started this exchange, and it was the greatest exchange in the world. It was like, no, this dude was having like poly orgies with like his secretaries, and it was weird dude. And that was our government backing Sam Bankman-Fried, and they wanted him to have you to put all of your Bitcoin on his exchange, which then he controls. He was taking your Bitcoin and going and selling it off in the open market without your permission. Because FTX didn't have proof of reserves, because we're not forcing these exchanges to actually have a legible balance of Bitcoin, because the blockchain, all of their exchange Bitcoin should be on their ledger, and then they kind of make digital Bitcoin on their exchange, which you can trade around, right? But the amount of digital Bitcoin should match whatever's in that wallet. So that's how Sam Bankman-Fried was able to basically collapse the price of Bitcoin and drive price down. So your friend is very, very right, and absolutely we're worried about that. But because it's Bitcoin and it self-audits the code every 10 minutes, every time a new block is mined, you can see where every single Bitcoin is at any time. If we force these exchanges and these bigger players that have those bigger wallets to show proof of reserves, it'll make it even harder for them to manipulate markets. And then eventually, Bitcoin's market cap's 1.2 trillion now. Well, when it gets up to gold's market cap and it's 11 trillion, it's even harder to manipulate because you need even more money. So it makes it harder for those whales to continue to manipulate price.
Great answer. Thank you. Another question coming in from the room. Do you think that the SEC could ever shut down Bitcoin like they did Ripple?
That's a great question. I asked that I had interviewed Gary Cardone, Grant Cardone's brother. And in our interview, he was talking about something and he brought up a similar question. And I said, well, what do you think about the United States, the SEC, and what our government is doing for crypto regulations? Do you think we're moving in the right direction? And he said, you know what I think about Elizabeth Warren and the United States government? Pardon my fingers, but this billionaire's doing this on my live stream, and he's going, and his exact words were, fuck Elizabeth Warren. Right now, the Bitcoin usage and adoption in America, only 12%. So all Bitcoin trades, everything right now, it's only 12%. When Bitcoin was first launched, it was like 99, 98%. So what you're seeing is every other nation that's friendly to Bitcoin. You're seeing entrepreneurs taking their businesses, they're moving to those nations that are friendly in Bitcoin, which is generating more adoption and more everything in that area, and Bitcoin adoption's going up. So less people are interacting with Bitcoin in America, and they're moving to more crypto-friendly countries. So it has gotten so decentralized, and it's being adopted on such a wide scale by so many different nations. They call that like the game theory. And we can probably get into that, where if you can't control the world's currency, you sure as hell don't want your enemies to. And we know that the dollar is done. The dollar, no matter what Trump believes or what anybody tells you, the dollar is never going to be the global reserve currency again. It is getting dethroned right now. Every other nation that is not trying to kill their citizens and is actually doing what's right for their people, they're starting to thrive, and their currencies are increasing in value, while the dollar is decreasing. Nobody wants to be sanctioned. Nobody also wants to use bricks. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are heavily invested in gold and these shiny rocks and things that are like, oh yeah, bricks is going to be it because it's going to be a gold-backed or a commodity-backed currency. But you're still trusting Putin, or you're trusting Xi, or you're trusting whatever other world leader is telling you that they have these barrels of oil. So yeah, I hope that answered.
That was an excellent answer. Kaylina hasn't come to get her purse yet. Just a quick reminder, Kaylina, if you're out there in the internet, you should probably start investing in Bitcoin. Because maybe not, because she has to remember her seed phrase, huh?
That's true.
And if she's forgetting her purse places, she might forget her Bitcoin places too. Maybe in my wallet. Here's this question is both on the internet and in the room. What's your thought on smaller market caps, smaller cryptos, all these other cryptocurrencies in the space? Should people be investing in all these other weird cryptocurrencies, or is Bitcoin truly unique and special?
That's probably one of my favorite questions. I was that guy. I had started mining Ethereum when it was $2.64. So I was one of the first YouTubers teaching you guys how to mine Ethereum. And I always thought, I remember making a YouTube video back in 2015. I think I said, Bitcoin is MySpace, Ethereum is Facebook, right? I thought it was going to replace it. I thought it was better. I thought that it was old technology in every industry. The first is never the one that sticks and wins. But people just think that Bitcoin was the first, but it wasn't.
MySpace was better, Ryan.
MySpace was better. and we had and it was, I don't know, I was wrong. And even into the next bull run, I still thought that Bitcoin was too expensive. I couldn't buy a full Bitcoin. And instead of thinking in 73% terms and going, okay, if I put 5,000 and it increases by 73%, it's the same as if I put 1 million and it increases by, percentage-wise, my wealth is still increasing. I wanted the 100, 200, 500%, which, yeah, an altcoin might go up 500 or 1,000% or 10,000 or 20,000, but it's normally up only at those 10, 20,000% for like a day. Sometimes it's only up there for like a minute, and then within an hour, it's 50% off. So you have to find that gem, if you will, and you have to sell it at the absolute peak to get those gains, whereas I'm just happy now putting my money into Bitcoin. And I went back before, and I have a couple of YouTube videos where I went and I added up all those sales and what I could have made and what I could have lost. And every single time, if I would have just taken that money and just put it into Bitcoin, I wouldn't have had the headaches, the amount of time that I spent researching these crap coins and all that energy I wasted. If I would have taken that time and just went and used that time to make more money and then use that money to buy Bitcoin, I would have been better off. So I highly suggest not buying, as they call them, shit coins, and doing everything you can. Go get us. So listen, I tell everybody, I got a subscriber that's done this, and you guys will see a video on it probably in the next year. This was in 2020. I just started my YouTube. I was streaming. And I said, you'll never have an opportunity to go work for 2 years, get a second job, work at McDonald's, and take every penny from that second paycheck and put it into Bitcoin and do nothing else. Work 2 jobs, put every penny from your second job into Bitcoin. So you're gonna go get a second job working at McDonald's, you're gonna do it for 2 years. And then you're never gonna have to work again for the rest of your life. And I have a guy, and we're documenting it right now, that's been doing just that. He's working at McDonald's, and when he got a second job at Taco Bell, no overtime, just a second 9 to 5, working about 35 hours extra a week. And he's put every penny of his paychecks into Bitcoin. And he's been doing it, we're going on like 3.5 years now. So I'll show you guys that video when we get done. And you'll see, you'll never have an opportunity. You're gonna work for a boss that you hate for the rest of your life until you're too old to spend your money and enjoy it because you put money into a 401k, which was a pipe dream that we've all been lied to. So yeah, that's the best answer I can give you guys.
Thank you. One more kind of beginner question. That might actually lead us into, do you want to go into what's on the screen here too a little bit?
Yeah, I will talk about that. Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Because there's a beginner question coming in from the internet of, there's a million answers to this, but for someone who knows nothing about Bitcoin, what is the best Bitcoin wallet to use? Or what's a good Bitcoin wallet to use for a beginner that doesn't know anything about Bitcoin?
I would say the most easiest is a company called Flux. So Flux, they used to have a wallet which was called Zelcore. Now I believe it's Flux Core Wallet. Flux is the most easy. And if you just search Ryan Matta Zelcore Wallet on YouTube, I have a lot of great tutorials that'll walk you through everything you need to know about it. There's a lot of newer wallets that have came out. Phoenix Wallet's pretty good. There's quite a few of them out there. But once you understand one, they're all kind of the same. So you want an open source wallet, which is the most important. You want that code to be out there published for people like ourselves to go through there and dig through the code and make sure there's no back holes or doors or corrupt code that's going to allow a hacker to exploit it. So as long as you're using an open source wallet that's been peer reviewed by a lot of people, you're probably in good shape. And yeah, you want me to go into this right now, Ian? I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you talk about money, which was what Ian was talking about, our goods in exchange, how do we exchange our time for somebody else's goods and services? So when you talk about money, you're talking about the 5 services that we seek for money. Meaning any guy in the room, if I told you that I'm gonna buy you a Lambo, and I'm gonna give you a Lambo, and you're all excited, I'm like, Monday morning, I'm dropping that Lambo off. Monday morning comes, and I'm like, hey, sorry, bro, I told you I was gonna give you that Lambo, but they were out of Lambos. I can only get this Ferrari. You're like, all right, I'll take the Ferrari, right? Like you don't care why, because that Ferrari is gonna provide you the same services that Lambo is. You're going to be able to look cool in front of your buddies. You're going to be able to pull up in front of any single chicks outside of a gym and probably pick up a cute girl or outside of a bar. You're going to be able to go fast down an expressway. You're going to be able to outrun cops. You're going to be living like James Bond or whatever, idea you have in your head. Those are going to provide the same services. So when I say you want money, right, you don't care if it's a debit card. You don't care if it's a credit card. You don't care if it's dollars. You want to be able to go into that store and you want to be able to buy your cup of coffee. You also want to be able to go buy your house. So we talk about the 5 services that money provides. You want it to be divisible, which means I want to be able to go buy that cup of coffee or I want to be able to buy that house. You want it to be durable, which means that I cannot pay you in apples. I might grow a lot of apples. I might have some really good apples, but you can only eat so many and your family can only eat so many. And they're not going to be good in your safe for 2 weeks from now or a year from now. Those apples are going to rot. So you want your money to be durable, which is why gold is such a great metal, right? Gold doesn't rust, it doesn't corrode, it doesn't devalue, it doesn't disintegrate. Gold is great, right? And then it's kind of how we had silver, right? When gold wasn't divisible enough, we had to create another coinage that held those same. Now you talk about recognizability, which is really important. You want to be able to go into a bar and pay with a $100 bill, and the bartender needs to be able to mark that $100 bill and verify instantly that it's not counterfeit. Gold, when you heard the term sound money, where did that come from? That came from saloons just like this in the 1700s. And when the bartender would have this specific tin next to her bar. So when you came and paid for your beer, she would take that money and she would throw it into that tin and it would make a ka-ting. If it made ka-ting, it was most likely gold. If it went ka-tong, you were probably getting a bullet, right? That's how they knew back then that money was counterfeit or the best, or they might bite it, right? So that's where you want recognizability. Now, portability is important when you're talking about $1 million in gold. Yes, $1 million in gold might only be the size of this laptop or it might be the size of this table, but it's cumbersome. It's a lot to move around. It's hard to move out of nations. It's hard to get on an airplane when your suitcase weighs more than the limit of your 50-pound bag because your gold's so heavy. Gold is not portable. It's not convenient, which is why dollars were introduced. We want to be able to interact in a marketplace, so we decided that it was better to use the trust me bro strategy and give it to JP Morgan Chase and let him hold our gold than it was for us to ride around within our stagecoach with a bunch of Indians coming out to shoot us. And then the last and most important is scarceability. You want your money to be scarce. You don't want it to be easy for somebody to go and just create. Let's use Africa. Glass beads were really, really big way back in the day, one of the first actual forms of money. Because in order to make these specific glass beads in Africa, they had to go to the beach and they had to carry this sand. And then they had to use special wood and special coal that would burn at a really hot rate. And they had to sit there and they had to stoke it, and they would do this in the ground in a deep hole and get this fire raging hot so that they could turn that glass or that sand into glass beads. So it was actually easier for you as somebody in that tribe to go and make necklaces or make bow and arrows and sell those bow and arrows to somebody that had glass beads, because it was less energy intensive for you to make those bow and arrows than it was to go counterfeit that money. So it made a great form of money. It was easy. But then fast forward 50 years, and the European settlers who wanted all of that elk skin, right, to make their wool coats, or they wanted those arrows, realized that, wow, we can make these glass beads in a factory for like absolutely nothing. So we go in this factory and we counterfeit all these glass beads and we bring them over here and we start sucking all the wealth from these nations in Africa. And that was our ability. And then the Africans realized, well, maybe this isn't the best money, right? And then you come into gold, and we've been on this experiment to find the perfect money. And obviously our government's been heavily incentivized to prevent us from finding that, because they can print money out of thin air and devalue the wealth of your family. So when you talk about services that money provides, Bitcoin is the apex predator. It dominates in every category, and there's never going to be another Bitcoin, because we don't need there to be another Bitcoin. We needed money to be sound. If gold was sound money and they weren't extracting 2% more of it, we don't know how much the Rothschilds, we don't know if these people have technology that's like, yep, they can, right now when they want to drill for oil, there's a gentleman that basically sends some type of frequency into the ground, right? And he's listening for the sound that makes. This guy has discovered, like, out of the last 150 oil wells, he's discovered all 150, and every single one with a 100% accuracy rate by just listening to the frequencies that they shoot into the ground. So there's no telling that they haven't figured out how to do that with gold, and there's these big pockets of gold which they can easily extract. We don't know, because gold's not finite. Bitcoin is finite, and that's why it is the apex predator in every category.
Thank you, Ryan. I think to close us out on one last big question, and actually I'll come over and get your question just a second here. This is kind of a cool question for people that are a little more into Bitcoin. Can you expand a little bit upon the idea of someday being able to take out a loan against your Bitcoin that you hold?
Yeah, so like I was explaining earlier, once you have that Bitcoin, you can play the bank. So if I want to put my Bitcoin into a specific wallet, I can go and put it onto a protocol, and I can lend it out to somebody. Or I can use my Bitcoin as a collateral to take out a loan and borrow against my Bitcoin, which gets you into this really weird, like, maybe Bitcoin, like say I have 10 Bitcoin, I don't want to spend my Bitcoin, right? Because if I sell it, I then have to pay taxes on it, capital gains tax. I'm selling an asset, right? I got to pay those taxes on it, but you don't have to pay your taxes on a loan, right? So I can use my Bitcoin as collateral, go borrow against my Bitcoin, take that loan, my Bitcoin just goes up in value. I then take the profit that I made from it, I pay back my loan, and I've just been able to spend $100,000 in the market tax-free. So that's why Bitcoin's so powerful. There's so much that you can do with it. Obviously, get a tax advisor, get somebody that understands finance that can help guide you through these things. But yes, Bitcoin's super powerful because you can use it as collateral to borrow against it, and it's the most liquid asset.
Excellent answer. Another kind of question in the same vein, you mentioned earlier how you previously took your money out of, I'm not sure if it was an IRA, out of your
401k.
401k, right? The question is, if someone wanted to transfer their fiat currency out of their fiat IRA and into a crypto-based IRA, do you know about that process? And are there multiple ways to do it? Is there a best way to do it? Like a quantum finance system, or there's like multiple ways to do it. Do you know anything about that process?
Yeah, I know a little bit about the process, but I think it's the wrong process, right? I think you are highly incentivized to study Bitcoin, learn how to do it, cash out your 401k, cash out your IRA, pay that fee, right? You're going to pay a 25 or 30% fee one time to put your money into an asset that appreciates at 73% per year, right? What happens if you move it into an IRA that's controlled by Fidelity or BlackRock, right? And where we're looking at, we expose these people, they're corrupt, there's a lot of crimes that they've committed, company goes bankrupt, your IRA is gone. Look at GM and all the people that had all their money into GM during the '08 collapse. GM filed bankruptcy, they lost everything. GM kept going, is right back, but never had to pay those people back, they lost everything. So never, with great reward comes great responsibility. Take the responsibility, learn, spend that 20 hours, that 120 hours to understand Bitcoin so you don't have to trust anybody with your IRA.
Excellent question. In the vein of with great power comes great responsibility, do you have a recommendation for a good place or places, like 1 or 2 or 3 resources that's a good place to send beginners that don't know about Bitcoin to go and start learning, like YouTube channels or speakers or, you know?
Actually, it was somebody who Ian actually did a podcast with. The gentleman's Robert Breedlove. He is probably one of the most knowledgeable speakers and most prolific.
Did you say Breedlove?
Yeah. Yeah, he's the best. Him and Michael Saylor they call it the Saylor series on YouTube. And it is by far, it's actually, I have a playlist on my YouTube channel. And almost the whole entire Bitcoin playlist is literally episodes from Robert Breedlove and Michael Saylor. It is the best. And that is where you start. You want to get that first 20 hours in, spend it on that podcast right there. And after the first 10 episodes, like you're going to be wanting to like pawn your wife's wedding ring to go buy some more Bitcoin.
Cool. I'll get a wife and I'll pawn her wedding ring.
There you go.
I'll go buy more. I was going to try to like be rude and cut off this last question because that was a great question to end on, but this last question is so good that we can't not.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
What happens if they shut off the internet?
So this is the best question you could have asked. So we were down filming this documentary. We went down to Texas, and we were going to meet with Doc Pete Chambers. He's, when you look up American Patriot, that's who you see in the dictionary. It's Doc's photo. His grandson got in a really bad car accident. We'd already flown all the way to Texas to interview Doc, so he was pretty upset that he had to leave, but obviously family emergency, and he goes, well, I'm going to put you in contact with my guys. And he wouldn't even tell us this guy's name, so we end up going to this undisclosed location, and we meet with these 2 gentlemen that are black ops. Like they were, 6 months ago flying like highly classified operations for our government, right? Like these are the real deal, like, I guess GI Joes, if you will. Like these dudes are badass dudes. And he's only talking for 3 minutes, and I'm like, hey man, are you sure I can't record this? And he's like, no man, you can't. All right, cool. And 5 minutes into it, 5 minutes later, I go, hey man, would you mind if I'll show you the camera, I'll point it at the wall, but I just want to record the audio just so I can take notes and go. And he goes, listen man, I know you really want to. And he goes, to summarize it, I could right now give you a video of Joe Biden beheading a child, then taking the blood from that child's beheaded head and writing Joe Biden, and then going and taking a photo with today's newspaper and holding up that newspaper with today's date on it. I could give you all that evidence and it still wouldn't be enough to stop what's coming. And I go, well, what's coming? And he goes, there's 4 scenarios that play out. And he goes, if any of these 4 scenarios happen, I want you to remember the rule of 3s. And he goes, in 3 minutes without oxygen to your brain, you're dead. In 3 days, or 3 hours out in bad environments without shelter, you're dead. In 3 days without water, you're dead. And in 30 days without food, you're dead. He goes, so let me be very clear. I wouldn't finish this documentary if I were you. I would just go home and get your family ready for what's coming. He goes, if you live within 5 miles of any major city, or 15 miles of any major city, or 5 miles of any major interstate, when one of these scenarios plays out, if you don't get out of that area in the first hour, you will end up in the 33% of the United States population that's dead within the first 30 days. No joke, right? Because we live in such a connected environment. Could you imagine with 30 million Venezuelan gangbangers that our government has just imported in here that come from countries that don't have 911? So when things don't go their way, their first response isn't look for help, it's to get violent. You think that our country can go 3 days without power? You think we can go 3 days without internet? If that happens, Bitcoin and what's happening to your Bitcoin is going to be like so low on your priority scale, it's not going to be even relevant. They would have to shut down internet on a global scale, so that means you're going to have to somehow corrupt and take down Starlink and these other governments that have internet. It's so unfeasible, and things would get so violent and so dangerous so fast. The actually best place for your money would be in Bitcoin. So that way, the second that the internet comes back on, your money is safe and you have your money. Best answer I can give you guys.
That's an excellent answer. I just want to remind everyone that Old State Saloon sells ammo. You can buy your ammo here. I believe Mark is also working on a gun sponsorship with a cool local gun company.
Let's go.
I think that's a great place to wrap this up. That was an amazing answer. Thank you, Ryan, for the amazing presentation.
You guys.
Give Ryan a huge round of applause.
Thank you.
Give Mark a huge round of applause for hosting such great talks and such great people.